We are standing in front of a panoramic shot of Georgetown, North Beach Road or First Line Beach or Rajaji Saleh and the harbour. This was probably taken sometime in the 1890s, and there are reasons for dating the photograph to that period. But first let us see what we have in terms of visual element in this. So right here you have what is called the fort battery, none of which exists any longer. You can see there is a thick rampart wall, and then you can see that there were slopes for rolling up cannon, and you can still see two cannons positioned over there. Next to it are buildings which probably were used for storing gunpowder, and this must have been part of the eastern rampart of the old town wall. And somewhere here there would have been a gate which was known as the Watergate. Now here you find that the harbour is completed, but not exactly in the way that we see the harbour today. You can see the warehouses have some of them have come up. There is a railway line that is curving, and there are trains that are taking goods to and from the harbour. And you can see that one arm of the harbour is completed. This is what was called the southern arm of the harbour. And then far away in the distance you can see the western arm of the harbour, but the northern arm of the harbour I mean, but you are not able to see the eastern arm, so probably that had not yet been completed. But you can see that ships were coming in and it was calm water. In the middle you have a very interesting structure which is ending rather abruptly in the middle of the harbour. This was really the first attempt at building a harbour, a single pier that would extend from the shore to a point where the water would become calm, and the ships would come there, passengers and goods would be offloaded and then taken in. But every time a cyclone came, this pier was battered and broken, which is when finally these two arms and an eastern arm was built to bring calm water and to allow ships to stay. So you can make out that this was definitely post the 1880s, but the harbour is still not fully completed, so therefore this was not yet 1900. The other clue is that there are no tram lines on what is today NSC Bose Road, and at that time this would have been China Bazaar Road. You can make out, so trams came post the 1895 over here. And here we have yet another clue to indicate to us that this photograph was taken after the 1880s. You see the General Post Office. The General Post Office was completed in 1885, and it is still retaining its Malabar cap, as Robert Fellowes Chisholm was so influenced by the Travancore style of architecture that he incorporated it all over the GPO. You can see old Parry House that was built sometime in the 1840s and which served for 100 years and was demolished only in 1938. And right here you have that enduring marker which is still standing, the boundary pillar of the esplanade. It is still there exactly where it was. And here you have Moore Street. Starting from here you have a series of very handsome Indo-Saracenic buildings. These were all Madras Christian College buildings. The MCC stayed here, MCC school and college. They stayed here till the 1930s, after which they moved. And then this entire block was brought for sale. That is when the Madras Cooperative Bank purchased this bit, which is today the Tamil Nadu State Apex Cooperative Bank building, which is right here, but not this building, demolished and it's come up later. And here you have the State Bank of Mysore building and the Bombay Mutual building. So these have all come up later on these sites. But still a remnant of the MCC is the old Anderson's Church, which is still standing exactly where it was. Now you can make out from this photograph that there is a second boundary pillar here. So there was one there, and then there is another one here. So obviously there was one just next to Anderson's Church, which doesn't exist any longer. And then we have the Agra Bank building, which was of course a bank headquartered in Agra, which then came over here and through a series of mergers and takeovers eventually became Grindlay's Bank. And right up to the 1980s, 80s I think, Grindlay's Bank used to occupy this particular building, after which it was demolished and modernized. But happily for us, not demolished, not changed over time, is Armenian church. Armenian street is here. You can make out the Dutch gable of the Armenian church. You can make out the dome of the bell tower, the belfry, and then the rest of the church. And behind it, you have the steeple of the St. Mary's Co-Cathedral, which is also visible. So this is Armenian street. This used to be the town branch of W.E. Smith, which used to occupy Cardill's building on Mount Road, which is today Bharat Insurance building. So they had their town branch over here. Now in front of this, you have a large open space, and you can see trees, you can also see some playgrounds. All this was the esplanade standing in front of Fort St. George and dividing it from Georgetown. So the Madras Christian College was using this place as its playground. You can see some facilities for playing are still here. There is very interestingly a tent, a marquee tent in that corner. It's not very clear as to what that marquee tent was being used for. You can see a horse carriage with a horse resting under a tree. I don't know and you can still see cannons, a remnant of the time when the fort was meant for defense. And so you can still see some cannons over here. So that in effect, and you can see Georgetown as crowded then as it is today, but probably a lot more beautiful with a lot of very interesting old buildings, not the kind of congestion that we have today in terms of people and vehicles and all that, remarkably free of vehicles. So that's a panoramic view of town as it existed. So a second panoramic view, probably taken from Parry House or from the second lighthouse of Madras, which is the Doric column that is standing inside the High Court campus today. But you can make out from here that the High Court was not yet constructed, and therefore this is a photograph that predates the 1880s, because the High Court came into existence in 1862, and it was only in the 1880s that construction really began of the High Court. So it's probably taken from one of those two locations. You can make out that the harbour has not developed at all, though probably work was going on and it is in this direction somewhere. And the sea hasn't receded, which also indicates to us that work had not yet progressed on the harbour. You can see how close the sea was coming to Fort St. George. This is Parry's Corner. This curious structure was probably Kelly's Bottle, which is where the drain of Madras was finally being let out into the sea. Once in a week, they would open the top of Kelly's Bottle and all the accumulated foul air would come out of it and permeate and then go off, drifted away by the sea breeze. This probably was that structure. You can make out the fort walls in a way that you can't make them out today. You can clearly see the boundary of the moat, which is going all around the fort. Here you have the flagstaff, at that time the tallest flagstaff in the whole country, 148 feet of one piece of teak wood, rescued from a ship in 1688, and that at that time was probably flying the Union Jack. Then you have certain other buildings. You can make out St. Mary's Church over there, and the oldest Anglican church east of the Suez Canal. And then you have got the Exchange building, which is today the museum. The Secretariat is not yet constructed, so it is only because that came up only in 1911, and so that side of it is completely empty, and then there are just some buildings. You can make out King's Barracks over here, at that time still the largest barracks in the whole country, 100,000 square feet spread across 2 floors. You can see the north gate of the fort. This was the gate that people used to use for coming out to go into Georgetown. And then you have the rest of the fort. It's a very interesting panoramic shot. Today, none of this exists because all of this is NSE Bose Road, buildings have come up, High Court, Law College. Behind it, that side, all the army residences have come, old Fort Glassy quarters have all come up, and so you cannot see any of this. It's a very unique view today of Fort St. George. And so we come to the end of this journey of 10 items of memorabilia of the Murugappa Group and its constituent Parry and Company. It's a bird's eye view of the history of these two entities by using a few markers. But there is such a lot more as can be imagined in the collections of these organizations. And why do we need to preserve them? It is only by looking at the past that we can learn for the future. By avoiding the mistakes that took place, by learning from the successes that happened, every step in history has got a lesson for us. The way these architectural and other heritage markers are preserved is a lesson for other organizations and corporate houses and institutions. Let us hope that they all learn to preserve what they have, for it is only that way that we will be able to create a holistic history of this city that we all love so much, Madras, that is Chennai. At the same time, there are certain aspects that can never be captured. A certain way of doing business, a certain set of principles, of ethics, of core values. These can never be captured on camera or in terms of objects. But it is in the continuity of history through these objects that those core values and principles live on and tell the story for succeeding generations to come. We hope you have enjoyed this series of episodes, and let us hope that there will be a lot more in the years to come.